Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's HostBridge Technology webcast. My name is Farrell Johnson. I'm the Director of Business Development. We also have Susan Henderson, who is our Sales and Marketing Coordinator, and she will be managing our webcast today. And our presenter is Bill Slovan, the Wire Product Lead. Wire is our short name for the Web Interface Rules Engine. And as part of the presentation, Bill will be showing a live demonstration of Wire. Before we get started, I want to take just a couple minutes. I see that we have a number of folks that are still in the process of logging in. It looks like most are joining via their PCs and are not on the conference call part of the session. So if you have questions as Bill is presenting, please take advantage of the question and answer or chat window in the right-hand portion of your screen. You can post questions, and we will periodically pause during the presentation demonstration and allow the phones to be unmuted. We can take questions directly, or we'll ask the questions that have been posted in the Q&A window. Also, WebEx did a version upgrade a little while ago, and you can take advantage of some new features. In the upper right-hand corner of the HostBridge Wire screen that you're seeing, there are some opposing arrows, so you can maximize that view if you want. And you can also use the plus or minus buttons that are nearby the opposing arrows to zoom in or zoom out. So I know Bill will be switching through several different applications as he shows the demonstration of Wire. So please take advantage of that to make sure you're getting to see the big picture. We also will send out the slide deck that Bill will be going through after our presentation today, so you can have everyone who's attended will receive that. And we are recording the demonstration day as well, so if you want to watch it at a later time, or if there's some others within the organization you would like to show this to or socialize about the Wire product, what you've seen, please just reply back to our email to Susan, and we'll make a link and a password available to you so you can pass that along, and anyone then can view today's presentation. With that, let me hand off to Bill Slovan.
Thanks, Farrell. So today we're going to be talking about Wire, and Wire is a product that allows us to take our mainframe applications and provide them to our end users in web browsers, in mobile browsers, and it sits on top of the HostBridge suite of products that you may already know about, and utilizes the capabilities that HostBridge provides on the host system to be able to act as the front of glass, so to speak, or the front-end application, or the application that your users can interact with to get to their mainframe applications. And it's all about taking those green screens and making them more modern, being able to combine them with other applications and other sources of data within your environment. So we did some introductions. We're going to talk about some of the business advantages of using Wire. Then we're going to jump into a demo. I'm going to show you a live demo on our system. We'll talk about some success stories, and we'll do some Q&A. I'll also stop a couple times during the slides to take some questions if there are some questions while I'm doing the presentation. So the whole idea behind Wire is to take your green screen applications that you've been using for many years and your organization depends on heavily, and present those to your end users in web browsers and in touch-enabled devices like tablet devices and handheld devices. And what Wire allows you to do is it allows you to initially just take all your green screens and put them up on the web, make them available on through a web browser, and then over time, as you'll see, you can start to modernize and enhance the functionality of those applications for your end users. Make them easier to use, simplify the screens, reduce the amount of time it takes to execute a transaction, and really modernize how that application is used in your enterprise. Some of the advantages with Wire: you can rapidly deliver an application to a web browser on a PC as well as mobile devices like tablets and handhelds. You can combine screens together from multiple applications. So you might have a mainframe application sitting on one system and another one on another system. You could combine those together into a single user interface and create a very rich application that combines data from multiple systems. You can integrate Wire with external data sources like databases and web services, services that are available out in the cloud. None of what we're going to show today required any coding on the host system. The only requirement on the host system is that the host bridge component is running up on the host in a CICS region, and all of the application customization and configuration was done down on the web application side. The applications can be enhanced at your own pace. You don't have to re-engineer or redesign or change any screens day one. You can simply just install Wire on a server, point it to your mainframe, and just get the screens as they are today right in your web browsers, similar to how you access them today through, let's say, a terminal emulator. And then you can also integrate with other products and other BPM-type solutions as well. We have a solution called Clearview BPM that provides some workflow capabilities, and Wire can integrate directly with that. With Wire, you can reduce training time. So by modernizing the user interface and by combining screens together into a single screen or combining multiple applications together into a single presentation layer, you can really reduce the amount of time it takes to train new users. New users coming on board might not be very familiar with green screen applications. There might be a steep learning curve in understanding those types of applications. And with Wire, you can give them more of a web-based interface that's got drop-downs and has things that they're familiar with that are more like the current web-type applications. You're always leveraging your existing business rules. So none of what we're doing here today requires rewriting your business logic or changing the way your mainframe application validates data or verifies business logic and rules. All of that is leveraged with Wire. And then there's many ways to reduce cost. Of course, there's enhanced productivity with Wire. You can make your users more efficient, give them screens that allow them to do multiple business transactions within a single screen. You can reduce the need for terminal emulation because you're now deploying applications over the web browser. You can reduce your desktop support because you no longer need to support terminal emulation on the desktop. You can access these applications right through a standard web browser. You can move tasks to your customers. So some of the functionality you're going to see today, you might even want to make available to your end users or your customers, through the internet. And you can extend the life of your mainframe applications because you can modernize them without having to replace them. So right out of the box with Wire, you get something that's called classic mode. And what classic mode is essentially your terminal emulation type screens, all your 3270 screens that you'd normally see in your emulator, available in a browser. We support all the major browsers, i.e. Chrome, Safari, and Firefox, as well as Safari on iOS and Chrome on Android as well as iOS. And day one, you just simply install Wire on a server, on a Windows-based server, and you get the entire mainframe application available right in that web browser. It's completely thin. There's no ActiveX components or Java components that have to get installed on the PC. And right out of the gate, you have complete heads-down use. You can use the keyboard. You can navigate around just like a terminal emulator. And you have the ability as well to use the mouse to click on certain areas of the screen. For example, you've got buttons down here at the bottom and some basic mouse-driven functionality that you get right out of the box. Really, there's no training because you could sit a user in front of this and they're going to see all the same screens they're used to seeing in an emulator, and there's really nothing different about it. Your entire application is now available. It's just by pointing the application to your host system. But some of the things you can do beyond that is you can utilize some rules-based enhancements. And this is what we call standard mode, where you're not changing the flow of the screens, you're not changing how the screens are laid out or where the fields are, but you're providing the user things like a drop-down or a calendar picker to be able to pick a date for a date field on the screen. You're providing more detailed descriptions for fields on the screen. And you can do these things very easily with the tools that we give you, and we actually provide about 50 rules right with the product that have been pre-configured, and you can then apply those rules to your screens based on the fields on the actual screen. And right out of the gate now, you can give this to a user and they'll be familiar with the screens because the screens look the same, they're laid out the same, but they've got these data entry enhancements. I don't have to go remember what the codes are for a particular field or have to go jump over to some other screen on the mainframe to try to find those values so that I can figure out what code I have to put in that field. You can give them a drop-down right there, and that drop-down will go out and grab the values from your underlying databases, vSAM files, wherever they might live, Excel spreadsheets, they could be anywhere, and Wire can then just go out and grab them and provide them in a drop-down to the user. And then beyond that concept, you can completely redesign or change the layouts of the screens. And we have a couple ways that you can do that. We provide you a set of tools that we call the Wire Toolbox that allows you to, right inside Microsoft Visual Studio, you can drag and drop fields onto the screen and wire them up to your mainframe fields and provide a user interface without any coding. It's just simply done using drag and drop type manipulation. And anyone who's got any kind of web development experience would be familiar with this. These are standard components that are part of the Microsoft development platform, which have been Wire enabled, essentially. They know how to interact with your host mainframe system, and you simply then wire them up to the fields on your host mainframe, and you can then create a nicer presentation of a screen. And I'll show an example of this in a moment. Then what you can do to take it a step further is we provide a whole plugin model where there's an API and you can build your own mini applications that run inside of Wire that Wire can invoke when a certain screen displays or based on some sort of condition that you define, and that plugin can then go out and do just about anything. It's a completely open .NET-based programming environment. You could go out and call web services. You could grab data from databases. You could invoke another application on your host system. You can access things in the cloud. So you have the entire capabilities of Visual Studio available to you. And at the same time, you can then use that to drive information into and out of your mainframe applications. So I could say all this stuff, but until I actually show it or we prove it, it's only words at this point. So we have a little demo here that we put together, and what we did here was we defined a set of business challenges that someone might have in an enterprise. For example, they might have an application where they've got a lot of screens, and in order to complete some sort of transaction, the end user has to traverse through a whole bunch of screens to get that done. And not only that, but they also have multiple mainframe applications that they need to access. Maybe you've got a billing system that's on one mainframe application and you've got an inventory system that's on another one. Or maybe your CRM system needs to access certain customer data that's only available in one particular mainframe application. And you really want to be able to integrate these things together. In addition, maybe you've got data that's not on the host system. Maybe you've got an Oracle database or a SQL database, or you've got something running in the cloud in MySQL or wherever it might be. You've got data elsewhere, not on the mainframe, that someone needs to access in order to complete a transaction. And the user could be mobile. Maybe they're doing this on a tablet. Maybe they're walking around a warehouse or doing inventory or doing something that requires mobile access. And the rules behind this are not very easy. They're not trivial. They couldn't just be simply rewritten in another application. There's lots of rules and lots of important sets of criteria that have to be met in order to complete the transaction. So what we're going to do here is we created a single page that combines multiple applications together into a single process. It's going to read and write to multiple applications from within one screen. It also integrates with services that are outside the host, and I'll go through those in a little more detail once I show you the application. Everything we did here required absolutely no coding on the host system, and it's all accessible via a mobile device or just a standard PC browser. And it was done, what I'm going to show was done in under 2 days. So it really does not require a lot of development effort to do this. So I'm going to jump into the demo now. Before I do that, does anyone have any questions about what I just described?
Susan, you want to unmute the phones?
Okay, I guess I will continue then. So what you're looking at right now is a terminal emulator, and I've signed into a region on our mainframe environment. And this is a simple IBM supplied application that it mimics an e-commerce system. It's a relatively simple application that allows us to order items from, there happen to be office supplies. And what I can do is I can go in, I can pick an item, hit enter, and I can order, put in a quantity. I want to order one item, put in my username and my department, and whoop, I put in my quantity, and it'll place the order. And presumably now this order goes downstream to fulfillment somewhere. But this is really a demo application, so it's just simply placing an order into a database and storing that information. I've also got a second application that I'll pull up, this application is a stock trading application. And again, this is also part of a set of demo applications that IBM provides. And in this application, I can simply go into a particular company and I can get a real-time quote of what their stock price is, or I can buy and sell shares of the stock. Again, very straightforward, and allows me to do this transaction. So what we did was we took the functionality of these two applications and we combined them together into a single composite application. And I'm going to pull up a browser here, and I'll show you exactly what I mean by that. So this is Wire. So I've just logged in, or I've just navigated to an URL, which is points to a server on my network here, where I've got the Wire application running. it runs on a Windows server in Microsoft IIS. The installation is very simple and straightforward. I've gotten now to my login screen. And this is just a sample login screen. You can customize this with your logos. You could even integrate this with your Active Directory or single sign-on, whether it's you're using RACF or something else up on the host. It'll use all of your existing security protocols that you've got. In this case, we're using RACF security on our mainframe. And I'm going to choose here this composite application. And I'm going to log in with my user here, my demo user. And what happens is I get this interface here. And this interface was designed to go against the two applications I just showed you a minute ago, and also combines other functionality, other data sources in the enterprise. And the concept here is I'm a user, I'm ordering some supplies, but at the same time, I want to know, well, who's the manufacturer of those supplies? Because the system I showed you a moment ago didn't indicate that. It didn't show, well, who makes these ballpoint pens or who makes these items? Well, maybe that's stored in a separate database. Maybe it's stored in our CRM system, or maybe it's stored in some other inventory system that exists out in the environment. So what we did was we created a little database, a little data structure that maps the items to their manufacturers. And now Wire's, not only is it going out and getting all of the items that are available, it's also going out to this external database, which happens to be a file in this case, and it's reading that file to determine who's the manufacturer of this item, and it's populating that right here. So Wire went out and got all that information and presented it. In addition, it's saying, okay, well, I've got the manufacturer. What's the address of that manufacturer? Well, maybe that's stored in yet another system. Maybe that's in my CRM system, and I've got to look up that customer to find out their address. So we also did that as well, and we went out and grabbed, based on the customer or the manufacturer, we went out and grabbed their demographics, their address in this case. And then we said, well, let's put it on a map. Let's take that address and let's put it on a map. And to do that, let's go out to the cloud and let's use MapQuest to map that. So here we've got a little map here that was loaded up based on this address. And if I switch to a different item, it'll change addresses and it'll map it to the other location. And that's actually now going outside the enterprise, out to the cloud to get that information. And then we said, you know what about showing the item, a picture of the item? We've got an inventory system that's got images for these items. Let's go out and grab that too. So we're also doing that as well, and we're showing a picture of the item. So as I navigate to different items here, the picture changes as well because it's pulling that from a repository we have. So now here comes the sort of the nuts and bolts here is what I want to do here is I want to actually order an item. And at the same time, in this particular demo situation, I want to also purchase shares of this company. So what I want to do is I want to actually execute transactions against both of these mainframe applications, one that's handling the purchase of the office supply and one that's handling the stock purchase. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to put in a quantity. So let's order 2 items, put my name in, put in my department again, and I'll put in my quantity of IBM shares that I want to buy. I want to buy 34 shares, and I'm going to complete my purchase. And now what happens is Wire on the back end went out and navigated through all the screens it needed to place that transaction, order those 2 items, those 34 shares, looked for a success message, and once it got that success message, it put it back on the screen. And this was all built out. What you're seeing here was all done in just a couple of days. In the case where, let's say, I didn't have enough inventory of an item, let's take this item here, for example. I've got 3 items in stock, and let's say I try to order 10 of these. it will actually tell me that I don't have enough inventory, insufficient stock to complete the order. And that's exactly the same message that would have been returned had I done that right here. So it's really, it's enforcing the business logic on the host system. To make sure I order the right one here. But if I had done the same thing here and I ordered 10 of these, I would get that same message, and Wire simply took that message and displayed it back to the user. It didn't change the business logic. I didn't bypass that rule. That rule still gets applied within this system. So that's what you can do when you're building composite applications. Now, maybe you have some users, though, that just want to see the mainframe screens the way they are. You know, maybe they don't necessarily need to see a more modernized or more composite type application. For those folks, you can certainly give them just the basic applications in their current form. So I'll just load up that same e-commerce application. And what I'll do here is I'm going to flip to what we call classic mode. And here's the mainframe application exactly as it is in an emulator. And I can use the keyboard. I can move around. I can use it just like I can in any emulation type application. So you can give this to certain users who maybe are seasoned users who know the screens and are used to getting around very quickly and very efficiently. But for those newer users or those users that might need to take advantage of a more composite type interface, you can give them that capability. And then we also have, as I mentioned on the slides, we have what we call standard mode as well, where you can have more or less a similar presentation. Whoops, I logged out by accident. Similar presentation as the classic mode, but you might just pretty up the screen a little bit, or you might provide them the ability to have lookups or calendars and things like that on the screen available to them. Okay, so I'm going to take a quick pause now, and we're going to open it up for any questions.
Bill, we had a few questions come through the chat. Can we actually run it on the host?
So currently, Wire runs on a Windows environment, so it would have to run on a server. That server can be virtual, but it is not currently set up to run on the host system. There are some plans Microsoft has in an upcoming version of the framework to make the .NET framework be cross-platform. And once that happens, it should be coming out pretty soon. Once that happens, we're going to look into what's involved in doing that.
Okay, and can it support all client-side technologies and frameworks like Angular, single-page apps, etc.?
Yes, absolutely. You can build Wire screens. You can build screens like you see here using any client-side technology you want. Whether it's Angular, whether it's React, whether it's any client-side framework would be usable within Wire. We don't restrict you to what tools you can use.
Okay, and then one more. If the multiple screen navigation and orchestration rules is off the host, will there be a performance issue?
So you can run it both ways. You can run the orchestration on the host using HostBridge technology, using the HostBridge HBJS on the host system, where you can automate screens and build services on the screens, or you can do it using Wire, using a Wire service like we're doing here. There's going to be a little bit of a difference in performance because, of course, automating a screen-oriented transaction on the host is going to be a little bit faster than going back and forth. It really depends on the use case. If you've got a lot of screens to navigate, it might make sense to do that on the host using a HostBridge JS service. Just to give you some numbers, I've got a slide here that shows how many screen navigations were done to generate the screens that we created here. Basically, to populate the grid, we did 47 screen navigations because we had to pull all the items and then we had to drill into each item to grab the stock. We did 3 more to get the manufacturer details from the stock trader application. And then we did 4 more to purchase the product and 4 more to order the shares. So that's puts in perspective how many screen navigations were done to build that screen, in addition to the external lookups that we did to get the manufacturer name, the map, and the image.
Okay, that's all I have, sir.
Okay. All right, so just to give you an overview of the technical architecture, as I mentioned, Wire runs on IIS. It can access any of your external environments using just standard .NET-based APIs. If you've got a driver or an API for any database technology out there, you can access that through Wire. It accesses your host system. It uses, if you're running CICS, it uses an XML interface just using the standard base HostBridge component on the host system. And we can also access other host types as well. But we do get the tightest integration when we're talking with CICS via HostBridge. And then on the front-end side, you can present those screens in classic mode, as we showed a little while ago, standard mode where you can get a prettier display with drop-downs and some rules-based enhancements, or enhanced mode where you can completely change the look and feel and the way the screens flow from one to the next and combine them together into a single screen. So just to talk about some success stories, in the manufacturing world, we did a project where they took about 60 screens that a user had to go through in order to make certain business decisions. And these were reports and analytics that users were accessing on the mainframe. They took those 60 screens and they built one web screen in Wire that would grab all the data from those screens, combine it together into one presentation, and gave them that ability to access that data on an iPad as well as their desktop PC or even a handheld device. It really reduced the amount of time people had to spend navigating through mainframe screens, and also was able to integrate with some vSAM data structures that they had on their host system to provide more intelligent searching. So now when they're searching for a particular customer or client, they don't have to go somewhere else in the mainframe to try to look them up. They can actually get an autocomplete type search, kind of like a Google type search against their live vSAM data. Also got drill downs, the ability to click on a row of data, and then the application would go and grab the detailed screens for those for that particular item. And they really had avoided having to do a whole migration. I mean, they were talking about putting in analytics packages and things like that, and they were able to use this tool instead for a lot of that functionality. Another success story was in the auto industry. They've got users that walk around the inventory floor and they handle shipments. They were doing this in a very paper-based way. And with Wire, they're able to do this with handhelds, with tablet devices, and allow for the mainframe to get the updates in real time versus having to write these down on paper, go sit back at a terminal, and then key the data back in. I'll flip through a couple of these quickly. In the healthcare industry, we did an implementation. We helped a client with an implementation where they had both the enrollment department and the claims department were using the mainframe applications. And with Wire, they were able to really streamline data entry on the enrollment side. On the enrollment side, they cut the transaction time in half, and they also provided additional data entry verifications that the mainframe didn't have that reduced the amount of errors that were being entered and really reduced by half the amount of time their staff was taking just to enter data. And they were able to put those folks on other tasks and really saved a lot. On the claim side, they had about 700 users, and with Wire, they were able to optimize the flow of how they process claims. Instead of having to go through multiple screens, they're able to present a claim on one screen, which was a huge savings because they would previously have to look at about 11 or 12 screens just to look at all of the data within a claim. And with Wire, they were able to provide them a single screen. They actually integrated the claim system with a corporate workflow system with the Clearview BPM solution that I mentioned earlier. So they were able to route work around the organization from within the claims department. And of course, they could reduce user training. The application screens are much simpler to use. They're more web-like. They're touch-friendly, and they increase their accuracy overall. And this is just an example where there was this is the enrollment screen I mentioned earlier. They built a single screen where they could enroll a new member into the plan, and underneath that would actually then drive through a series of screens. This particular scenario uses HostBridge, HBJS on the back end, and then the front end interface is built in Wire as a .NET web form type application. And all of these little spyglass icons here provide drop downs. These calendar components are calendars that expand out, allows the user to pick a date. And they even were able to define their own rules here up front to prevent data entry mistakes from getting into the back end. So all of these red underlined fields are required. They even had rules around certain fields had to have certain values in them that were conditional based on other fields, and all of that was implemented as rules within Wire so that they weren't putting data into the back end that ultimately would cause some problem downstream or cause it to get rejected by the back end anyway and then require additional work for the business user. So just to summarize, Wire is about rapidly deploying web interfaces for all types of users, whether it's your power user, whether it's your customer service representative, whether it's your customer. Any of them can take advantage of some of the interfaces that Wire can provide. There's no changes needed to your host system in terms of application changes. All you need on there is HostBridge within your CICS regions, and you're all set. Multiple host applications can be combined together into a single presentation, and that can be done very rapidly without a lot of redesign and re-engineering. It's simply just laying out how you want the screens and then wiring up those fields to your underlying host system. Wire can integrate with external data sources. It can be hosted on-premise on your own servers, or it can be hosted in the cloud. You can provide your users complete access to your host applications right out of the box on day one. The applications can be enhanced or modernized at your own pace. You don't have to do it all day one. You can start to do little pieces of applications or take a business unit and use them as a pilot and enhance and modernize their applications and then slowly roll that out to the rest of your organization. And then we also do provide a quick start where at no charge we'd come in and we'd show you a proof of concept of how you can use wire in your environment to be able to modernize an application or some screens within an application. And then beyond that, we offer training and consulting as well as support services for the product. So we'll take a quick pause for some Q&A. Susan, I don't know if there were any additional questions that came in.
Bill, they'd like to know a little bit about the pricing model. Like, is it
okay,
yeah.
Sure. So we have a few different models. It can be priced per core if you want a server-based license. It can also be priced on a user basis or on an application basis. So really depending on the use case, a large enterprise that wants to do this across their entire environment might purchase a core license, a core-based license. But if you've just got a single application or a single business transaction that you want to do day one, you could just buy a transaction-specific license that gives you the rights to use it for any users that use that particular function, and we would license it that way.
Okay, and also, can COM area or non-visual transactions be accessed, or does it just have to be the 3270 screens?
Sure. So you can access COM area programs as well, and that can be done because we have the HostBridge connector running on your host. We have the ability through that connector to be able to access all the non-visual components, any web services or scripts that are running up on the host would be available as well, and those could be combined with the 3270 presentation.
Okay, that's all I see in the chat windows, Bill.
All right. Well, I'm going to turn it back over to Ferrell. If anyone does have any questions, his contact information is up on the screen there. And we're certainly more than happy to set up a deeper dive into the technology. If you're interested, we can show you how these screens were developed. We can really get into the nuts and bolts of how wire is used to modernize your applications, and even maybe look at a particular use case that you might have and help you define a pilot or a quick start that we might help just to show you how the product works in your environment. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Ferrell.
Bill, thank you. As I mentioned previously, we will be emailing the slide deck of the presentation that Bill spoke from today. We also recorded this presentation and demonstration, so if you do want to share that with others in your organization, please just reply back to an email or contact us directly, and we'll be glad to send a link and a password to the recording. Bill mentioned that we do pilots, so we're happy to do that. So if there's a particular use case that has triggered interest in today's presentation, just contact us. We'll be glad to schedule a call. We can talk about it and then talk about the next steps to do a free pilot. If there's nothing else, we thank you for your attending today, and this will conclude our public webcast. Thank you, everyone.